Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks so much for being here. Welcome to our special Trump's Silent Majority. Today's special, we're going to talk about the shy Trump voter. And pollsters wonder why this is a thing. Are you kidding me? We've had 4 years now of people getting fired, businesses being boycotted, some burned to the ground. We talked to one of those business owners yesterday. And it's not only what we've seen these last 4 years, it's what they say they are going to do to you if they win. Check this Orwellian thing out. This is unbelievable to me. This is Chris Hayes from MSNBC, the Rachel Maddow lookalike. He said, the most humane and reasonable way to deal with all these people, if these people, that's you, if we survive this, it's like a weird, is some kind of Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Truth and Reconciliation Commission. What? What are you talking about? This is Robert Reich. He's a former, Clinton's former labor secretary. He said, when this nightmare is over, the Trump presidency, we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There it is again. It would erase Trump's lies, comfort those who have been harmed by his hatefulness, and name every official, politician, executive, and media mogul whose greed and cowardice enabled this catastrophe. Truth and reconciliation, what is that? And then after that, he said, I love the people who are responding to this tweet as if this is a radical, undemocratic idea. And he linked to an article, and apparently, according to this article, 40 countries around the world have had some version of a truth commission. And it's countries like Ghana, and Ecuador, and Kenya, and Liberia, and Morocco, and Rwanda, and Sierra Leone, and South Africa. I'm like, yeah, not exactly like countries whose models we want to follow, Robert. So what would this look like? What are they talking about? This is MSNBC.
Let me take an example like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, because it's a good example because apartheid went on for a long time. But basically, people would come before that commission and admit there was a truth-telling. They would say, I did this. And that was the birth of the concept of reconciliation because they were able to admit what they did wrong. Here in America, we have a different problem in that there are a whole bunch of people who say, I didn't cause this problem. Might have been my ancestors, or maybe I'm a recent immigrant. It's somebody else's fault. How do we convince people that it doesn't have to be their fault to be their responsibility to fix it?
Okay, so I found some videos of this happening in South Africa. And the scene is, it's like a courtroom. And in South Africa's case, the white person is up there on the stand and they're being accused of crimes. And the victims come by and demand apologies and tell everyone what the person did. And then in return for this, like I was thinking, like, why would so we talked about this on the radio yesterday, and some guy from South Africa called in and told us like their whole experience with all this. So the black people in this case would say, here's all the terrible things you did. The white person would apologize. And I'm like, well, why? Why would this thing happen? Why would the white person go up there and like be a part of this? And they would do that in exchange for not being convicted of a crime. Right, so that's why one would endure this public shaming, is you don't get convicted of crimes that you may have committed. Now, there's two different things kind of going on here. Like there's talk of a Truth and Reconciliation Committee for the evils of slavery in America and for Trump officials and supporters. Now, the difference between us and apartheid in South Africa is that apartheid, there were actual victims of actual crimes, right? If we had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission in America, it would be, regarding slavery, it would be non-victims attacking people for crimes they didn't commit, slavery, or non-victims attacking people for crimes or for things that aren't crimes. Like, I don't like that policy that Trump passed that you supported or something. They'd get Trump supporters up there and berate them for the terrible injustices committed by the president, like that horrible separating of children policy that he inherited from Obama and ultimately ended. Or remember that horrific criminal justice reform package, the First Step Act. You know, that type of really horrible stuff that get up there and get you. I'll say it again. No one's been able to do this. Name one policy from the Trump administration these last 4 years that's beyond the pale. It's just too much. Like, there's not even anything close to apartheid or the Holocaust. Trump has done nothing worthy of hysteria. Nothing. Nothing worthy of a public shaming of anyone who dares support such a policy of slightly lower corporate income taxes. like, that's insane. But here's the Orwellian thing of it. And this is why the polls are so wrong again, and why people are afraid to publicly admit that they are a Trump supporter. Just like they were 4 years ago, more so than 4 years ago. If the shy voter thing if the shy Trump voter was a thing 4 years ago, and it's 10x this go around. And the Truth and Reconciliation committees that are to come if Biden wins would have zero interest in truth and no desire for reconciliation. It would all be about shame and revenge. It would all be based on vengeance and anger and boycotting and canceling. Chris Pratt the other day got shamed for not going to a Biden fundraiser. That's all it takes. You just don't do a thing. Remember, I don't know why this one pops in my head. Remember I guess maybe the most recent one, the CEO of Goya, like the bean company or whatever, like came out and said something nice about the president, and there's like this whole boycotting. We go on and on. You know it all. The idea, though, that there are people out there like Chris Hayes and Robert Reich and many more who want to punish you for voting a certain way. That's pretty amazing. Like, did that thought ever cross your mind with Obama? Like, did you ever for a second think that Obama supporters or Obama officials should be put up and pillared on the town square? Like, I never. And if you need another reason to support Trump, it's to make sure stuff like this never happens. This type of petty revenge and an Orwellian truth commission. Jeez. And here's the thing. Trump, just like court packing, right? So the Dems are talking about court packing. Biden all but admitted that he will if he wins. And the left's all for it and everything like that. I think Trump needs to come out and say, you know what? I'm going to pack the court. Vote for me and I'll pack it, right? And then, of course, the left will be like, oh, packing the court's unbelievable. You can't do that. I think it's the same thing here. Trump should come out, you know what? Vote for me and I'll come up with a Truth and Reconciliation Committee. I'll have my very own, we'll have a right-wing Truth and Reconciliation Committee. We'll put up all the college professors and the Marxists in academia and entertainment, and we'll call out all the communists and Chinese sympathizers, and we'll shove the truth down their throats in the name of reconciliation. You know, if he did that, the left would be like, what an outrage. You want these people in charge? You want these people in charge? People who would even people who would say, you know what we need? We need that thing they did in Rwanda. That's what we need a little more Rwanda here in America. A few days, the silent majority needs to vote, and from then on, stop being silent. I'm done with this silent majority stuff. We're the vocal minority from now on. Yesterday, or 2 days ago, I bought some 100-ounce silver bars and 1-ounce gold bars. It's so amazing. Like, growing up, owning gold was something that like the super, super rich would do, like Scrooge McDuck diving through his gold coins. Like, that was so out of reach, like an impossibility. Like, I wasn't even sure it was allowed. Like, could you even do, like, maybe you had to go through like this long, like, application process. No. It's a free country. You just call Patriot Gold Group and they'll mail it to you. They'll mail it to you today. And you can have gold in your hands. You can do this. You're allowed to do this. And get it before the election. Don't wait till after to lock in a price here. There's 3 scenarios coming up as I see it. First, Trump wins and the left freaks out and riots and it's horrible. Second, Biden wins and we have every socialist program we can imagine and we have the Fed printing money nonstop. and taxes going up on top of that. Or the third option, there's no winner for like a month or so, and it's total chaos, and we haven't had this uncertainty since the election of 1876. Either way, the gold and silver will gain. And then even when things settle down, we're going to have trillions of dollars of stimulus bills, and all that's going to come home to roost. And then we're going to see the true economic fallout of 8 million Americans falling into poverty because of these shutdowns for the last 8 months. Like, it's not going to be good. And that's why I bought more gold and silver, America's highest rated precious investment firm. Like, couldn't be easier. Couldn't be easier. Patriot Gold Group's the best. And if you ever want to sell it, you just call them up and you just sell it. Just take it. That's it. There's no fees for that. You just, boom, sold. 1-800-798-4260. Give them a call. 1-800-798-4260 or patriotgoldgroup.com. Hey, Slater Crusaders, welcome back to our special Trump's Silent Majority. I want to talk about polling here. I want to do that with Scott Hounsel. He is the contributor and resident polling expert at redstate.com. Wrote an amazing article about a month ago about the ins and outs of polling and why, well, most polls are garbage. Scott, how are you, brother?
Alrighty, how you doing, Mike? Thanks for having me.
Good, man. Glad you're here. Let's talk about, I want to talk about opt-in voting, and first let's talk about sampling. What is sampling when it comes to polling?
Sampling is when pollsters try to ascertain who is and isn't going to be voting in the coming election. Most of the time, it's based on party registration within that state or in that district. They'll figure out who is registered to vote and by what numbers, and then they'll base those percentages in a model that they create of who's going to show up based upon also propensity from prior elections, who of each group voted.
So the problem with that clearly is you can't really be sure who's going to vote, right?
Especially in the 2016 and 2020 elections. I mean, we're talking about the fact of this shy voter poll, this shy voter number of people who we weren't expecting to vote in 2016 that voted. Yeah, we now know that they voted. But what about other people who were maybe reticent about Trump and now all of a sudden are going, oh, hey, he wasn't as bad as everything as we were told he was going to be. We were told the economy was going to crash. We were told all those other things. That didn't happen. So maybe I can support him. And we're seeing it in his the numbers at his rallies, that of them double-digit percentages of people who didn't vote in 2016 are showing up at Trump's elections. Double-digit Democrats, percentage of Democrats are showing up at Trump rallies. This is a very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah. For samples and polls, do you find generally them to be pretty accurate, at least by traditional metrics, like when a lot of these pollsters figure out what the sampling should be, or are they biased as well?
Oh, most of the time the media polls are way off, usually by double digits in their sampling. A while back, I was reading a poll and it had like 42-29 in a particular state, but the state was more like 32-31. So wow. They overpolled or they oversampled Dems by about 11 points and undersampled Republicans by 2. So 13-point swing in favor.
Totally. So is there justification? Oh, well, we think that more Democrats will show up than Republicans because Trump is so awful, and how could anyone vote for him? Is that what their justification is?
Yes, that is their justification, but their own data doesn't support that because the enthusiasm levels for Trump are as high amongst Republicans or higher than they are amongst Democrats. In fact, if you look at their own polling results, most of the time, people are more excited to vote against Trump than for Biden. So it's not like an enthusiasm for a candidate where they're like, yay, we got to go out and vote for Biden. It falls flat. It's more of that they oppose Trump. And oppositions to things don't necessarily carry as much drive to the polling as voting for someone or feeling like you're going to win.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. I've never met a Biden supporter, like a full-on Biden supporter. All right, tell me about opt-in polling. So you said in your article that we shouldn't pay attention to any opt-in polls. And by the way, the point is, as you so eloquently put it, is all people read are the headlines. And then if you read the story, it's very different. But then if you read the actual polling data, it's like a totally different thing than the headline actually is. And one of those things you got to look for if you're looking at the polling data is whether it's an opt-in poll. What is that, and what's the alternative to that?
So opt-in polling is when someone is able to go to a poll and participate. They choose to participate in the poll, or they seek it out. So any polling you see on Twitter, like someone's, oh, this is my unofficial Twitter poll, those can be taken over by trolls. People can show up and participate when they really have no business in doing so. So that's opt-in polling. Sometimes people are even paid to participate in polls, which would, of course, throw any result in any way, shape, or form. The way that you should be doing it is they should be going into the voter data in a state, which is public and publicly available, and pulling voters based upon that. Who showed up previously? What's been their voting history previously? To allow a voter to say, yeah, I voted in 5 of the last 5 elections, when maybe they've only voted in 2, which makes them a low propensity voter, but they're allowing the voter to state, because who's going to admit, I don't vote? Yeah. Who's going to show up and say, I'm not that guy, I'm not an engaged citizen? No, everyone's going to say, I vote every time. I'm going to vote this year. And in reality, they may not. Propensity models would suggest they wouldn't.
Yeah, so you need not only so if an opt-in poll is one thing, what's the alternative? Is it opt-out, or what do you call that? A random poll, or
a random sampling? So, in other words, it's just taking people who are registered voters and just contacting them. Their information's public. Anyone can go in and get it. How do you think the political campaigns contact voters? There's this voter data available, and so this is about ascertaining that data and then using it to do a poll. If I were doing a poll as a pollster, I'd go in and pull polling information, or not polling, voter information, and be able to contact those voters based upon their propensity and registration.
Such a good point. So if you're looking at the data, you gotta only make sure that it's not only an opt-in poll, but you gotta make sure that the poll took into account whether they voted in the past, and not have them self-answer whether or not people voted in the past. Geez, like that's what I'm saying. Like, this stuff's total garbage. Like, you can't trust any headline when it comes to this stuff, because they're not going to give you that data. Okay, so Scott, what's your analysis based off of the data and what you've been seeing when it comes to the shy voter? How are we supposed to look at the shy Trump voter?
So in 2016, I had a client of mine that came to me and said, how are we going to track down these people that are voting for Trump that you haven't voted before? And so I went in and layer after layer of providing a filters that would give us the result of who was going to be voting. And it was the best I could do. It was kind of like, well, we're kind of certain that these are Trump voters. There's no real way of tracking these people down. In fact, I've looked at case studies across the country of people being contacted by campaigns and saying, yeah, I'm supporting Trump, but don't let my neighbors know. Don't go out and make a big deal about this. Yeah, you got my support. Good. Yeah, see ya, bye. And they're afraid of their neighbors judging them, of them yelling at them, of their property getting destroyed, their cars getting keyed, whatever it may be that they think is going to be the result, when in likelihood it's probably not going to be the case, but they feel like someone's going to come after them if they vote for Trump. And we're seeing that in registration numbers throughout the entire country for the most part. Of the battleground states, all but 2.
Yeah, what are the? Yeah, give me the data on these registration numbers.
So this is my little baby. I've been going through and pulling these numbers to try to figure out exactly what's going on. And I've got, reason why I did this here is I've got my huge computer screens that I can go through this data. But let's give you an example. Let's start with Florida. Like, Florida's the key, battleground state, has been for years. Since 2016, Republicans have registered 444,922 voters. Since that's a 9.72% increase over their 2016 numbers. Democrats have only increased their numbers by 298,090. So another 130,000, almost 150,000 vote swing in favor of Republicans in Florida.
That's remarkable. How come I always think of the Democratic Party as being like the ground game party?
And this goes back to the shy voter. This is going back to the fact that people are motivated to do something. I really don't think that the Trump campaign, to be perfectly honest, has been out registering voters or really making a voter registration push or having voter registration drives and really trying to get everyone out. Sure, rallies double as that. So I'm sure that people are showing up at rallies and registering to vote. But I don't think to the number of 444,000 in Florida. What I think it is, people are seeking it out. They're looking for change and difference. And they're saying, well, Trump's not your normal guy. And so, I'm going to go with that guy. He's different.
So these are new voters. Is that what that is?
Right.
These are newly registered voters. That's amazing. So, and Trump, how much did Trump win Florida by last go around? Was it like 100,000?
Yeah, something about that range. I mean, it wasn't huge margin of victory. It was definitely decisive. It wasn't like Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania was like in the tens of thousands, right? Or Wisconsin was like 70,000, 7,000, or something like that.
Michigan was 11,000.
Wow. Okay. Do you have new registration in Michigan?
Well, here's the again, going back to the ability to try to find data where it's not available. Michigan doesn't register by political party. They just register as a voter. So I can't go in and find out who showed up as Republican and who showed up as Democrat. However, what I was able to do is go in and look at what counties Trump won versus what counties Clinton won. And in counties that Trump won, 152,677 voters were added since 2016. In Clinton counties, 81,809 voters were added. So another almost 2-to-1 margin for registrations in Michigan.
So to go back to Florida, do the pollsters consider, first of all, do they ask newly registered voters ever in their polls?
Depends upon whether or not they use. Well, most of the time, no. Let me just answer the question. Most of the time, no. Yeah. Now the question is do they use voter registration data, or are they opt-in polls or user-defined polls? What I call user-defined polls is where the respondents are giving them the data regarding registration, propensity, all the things that they're supposed to have the data for, and contact these voters. They're now letting the voters just respond, oh, yeah, I vote in every election, or yeah, I'm a registered Republican or Democrat or independent. And that just doesn't happen usually to add up all the time.
Totally. So I'm just thinking, like, you have to take into account, I don't think many people are going to change their mind from 2016. I think everyone's pretty set in stone. The only thing, as you mentioned, is you may get the former Rubio supporter who was bitter against Trump in 2016 for calling Marco Rubio Little Marco or whatever, and didn't vote for him in 2016, but now is supporting him in 2020. So I only see more of that, certainly. But then you have another 150K increase in new voters for Republican Party. Like, that seems like Florida is like a lock. So does polling take into account what you just shared with me or no?
I don't think it really does. It doesn't take into consideration a lot of voter attitudes that they normally would be going after. Again, talking about enthusiasm in these states, these numbers are where we need to be looking. Voter enthusiasm for Trump leads that for Biden by like almost 30% in some of these polls. You can't tell me that people are so excited about Trump and meh about Biden, and yet they're going to show up at the same rate. That just doesn't compute for me. It doesn't make any sense to data guys like myself.
Give me another data breakdown that's interesting, like that Michigan story.
So let's take a look here at, like, for instance, North Carolina. Again, another very interesting state. But remember, Trump only won by like 130,000 votes in North Carolina in 2016. But again, we look at since 2016, Republicans have added 71,947 voters. 3.43% increase in their numbers since 2016. And Democrats have lost 161,601 voters. Another 230,000 vote. Yes, lost 161,601 voters since 2016.
Well, it's like a 230,000 vote swing.
Right. And we're supposed to believe that this is competitive now. That's the point, is that they're trying. And I've said this now several times in articles since, is polling is no longer about measuring public opinion. It's about shaping public opinion. They're putting these polls out to say, Biden's so far in the lead, there's no reason for you Trump supporters to show up. You're going to be so discouraged. They're trying to chip away at that enthusiasm level for our candidate, or for Republicans' candidate, that they're trying to chip away at that they're saying Biden's going to destroy him. We're not going to see this. But again, remember what happened in 2016. Look at the polls in 2016. Look at the polls today. Same exact place.
Okay. I'm putting you on the spot. Give me one more. Can you give me one more of those?
Absolutely. Let me grab one more here. Let's see, I got Michigan, Florida, North Carolina.
How about Wisconsin? Can I throw Wisconsin down here? What do you got?
I don't have. Let's talk about Georgia for a second. Georgia's an interesting.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Georgia's
heading blue.
One. So when we read about Georgia data, we're kind of told Georgia is a swing state again, and everything else. But if we look at the fact that Trump won more counties in Georgia than did either McCain or Romney. In addition, if you look at the numbers coming out of some of these Trump counties that he won in 2016, the increase in voters, like for instance, in the last decade, 59.56% increase in one county in registered voters. I mean, that's insane. That blows away voter engagement. In other words, that's not just people moving in and re-registering or an expansion in growth of buildings. These are people who were previously unengaged who got engaged. You don't have a 60% increase because they built a new housing development.
Wow, okay, interesting. That would have been my first thought. And that 60%'s got to be more than any growth that's happening in the city.
Right, exactly. You're not seeing a 60% growth in any particular area. If you are over the course of a decade, if you are, it's obviously huge and drastic. But again, it doesn't explain the full number of what's happening.
All right, very good. Scott, you're the man. Let's, listen, we only got a couple more days left. Can we talk again beforehand?
Absolutely. I'm here anytime you need me.
Appreciate you, man. Love that. Right. Contributor, resident polling expert, redstate.com. Awesome. All right, more coming up. Trump's silent majority. Spread the word. Slater Crusaders, welcome back to our special Trump's Silent Majority. I want to go to a man who lives in a very progressive world, but has decided to, fight for the cause and fight for this silent majority that hopefully is not silent anymore. Brian Cloud is. Brian, how are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. So what's your story? So you're from a conservative state, but you moved. Why?
Yeah, so originally from Alabama, but I've lived in Georgia for the past 12 years. And, I'm an entertainment theater producer, and I came out this year as a loud and proud Trump supporter and got canceled by a ton of people and said, you know what? I think this is my time to really get involved with the campaign. I'm tired of hiding. So I sold my house in Atlanta. I moved to Florida, of course, a key swing state. And I've been volunteering with the Trump campaign for the past month and doing all I can to get this man reelected.
Tell me what you're thinking about or what you're seeing with the silent majority. Obviously, you're in the theater world, which is going to be pretty far on the left. So are you seeing people come out for Trump too there or no?
You have no idea. So, of course, there's been a ton of people in the theater industry say that I'm crazy, I'm racist, I'm sexist. I mean, every name in the book I have been called. But the really cool thing is I've had so many people, so many actors. I mean, some of these are like A-list Broadway actors and TV actors reaching out and saying, one, thank you for being out and proud as a Trump supporter. And two, we're part of this silent majority. We can't be out and proud because, we don't want to be canceled and we need to get work. But there are so many people that are part of this movement and want to fight for our country. They believe in President Trump. So I'm focusing on the positivity of all of this as opposed to the negativity. And, I've been traveling a lot over the whole state, and I was in Tampa this past week. And this really key eye-opening moment for me was, I was in this Tampa, really cool, what felt like a liberal Starbucks. And I walk in, I've got my full-on MAGA gear, and I'm like, okay, I'm just bracing for them to spit in my latte. But I walk in there, and, I kind of just strike up a conversation. I'm here for a Trump event, and the barista, who looks like he stepped out of Williamsburg, said, oh, my God, I'm a huge Trump supporter. And the girl fixing my drink said, I am too. She was like, we all are. So, this idea of a silent majority, it is so true. But I don't want people resting on that because we have got to work for the next 2 weeks.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So why do you think people are ashamed? So first, why did it take maybe you a little while before you would admit it out loud and et cetera? But why do you, in your experience, why are other people afraid to come out and say they support someone to be president of the United States?
Well, I think when you have the entire mainstream media telling you a false narrative, and hey, I believe this narrative for years myself. But this year, I stopped watching mainstream media and I started actually reading policy. I think that so much is manipulated. And also when you've got so many Hollywood and theater A-listers saying, hey, if you vote for Donald Trump, you're not gay. If you vote for Donald Trump, you're not black, you're not Latino. And I mean, when you're hearing this from all sides of these like really prominent, successful Hollywood and theater industry professionals, I mean, it creates a state of living in fear. I think all of this is fear-based manipulation. And, when I got to this point in my life where I'm like, I'm tired of worrying what people think about me. I am in a position as a business owner that I don't have to worry about people casting me or hiring me anymore. But when your paycheck depends on people hiring you and you're seeing people canceled left and right who even tiptoe. I mean, you're seeing Chris Pratt, who hasn't even come out as a Trump supporter. There's just rumor about him being a Trump supporter, and people are canceling him left and right. But I do think the only change this movement is to show that you can be a normal, loving, joyful human and support our president. Because my whole thing, and you've probably seen on my Twitter, is like being joyful, being loving. I don't play into the hate, and showing that we can live by example. And hopefully that's going to help change this whole movement. It's not a movement of hate. This is a movement of love and inclusion, despite what every single person in mainstream media is telling us. It's literally an awakening. And I see so many people this year saying, wait, why are they so hard on him? Why are they so mean to him? Something is not right. I mean, it's literally bullying,
What has been an issue or even just a bigger theme that in your experience has flipped people, right? Have you had those conversations with people who hate Trump and you've been able to convert them?
So one key thing, and I'm part of also the log cabin Republican, demographic. A lot of people think that Trump hates the LGBT community. So I flip them around and say, do you know that he is the only president that went into office supporting gay marriage? And he's the only president to have ever hired an openly gay cabinet member, Rick Grinnell. And people go, huh? I didn't know that. And I was like, yeah, I mean, these are major facts. So, a lot of the theater industry is very LGBT friendly. So that fact tips to kind of make people go, huh? And then they'll start doing their research. And here's the thing, if you're not a undecided voter in a swing state, I don't have time to give you my entire jukebox of politics. But I'll say, hey, here's some great resources to check out. But if you're an undecided voter, especially in a swing state, I'll talk to you till the cows come home, because I truly believe our freedom depends on it this year.
Tell me about rallies. Have you been to any rallies of Trump's?
So I've been to 2 rallies this past week. I went to the one in Sanford, which was his first rally post-COVID. And then I also went to the one in Ocala. Those were my first 2 rallies. And I cannot tell you how much fun I had. It was like Lady Gaga and Elvis, and they had a huge rock concert for this baby. I mean, I've just And here's the thing, there's this very specific idea of what a Trump supporter is. It's a white, uneducated, rural American. I will tell you, I have never seen so much diversity in my entire life than I saw at these 2 Trump rallies. You've got gay, straight, black, white, Latino, Pan-Asian, like every single demographic is there. And you know what? They're all happy. Everyone is smiling. I mean, can you imagine Americans happy and smiling in 2020? And for that alone, I'm like, why do you not want to be part of the happy people movement? Like, I mean, just like, we're looking at like happy or sad. I'm sorry, but I want to vote for the guy who has the happy people on his side, not the haters, not the hate side.
Dave Rubin went to the Trump rally in Beverly Hills the other day and had the exact same analysis. He's like, everything you just said, the types of people and then the joy of all the people. And that was in Beverly Hills, of all places. Brian, I got to run real quick. I got one last.
Yes.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, if that is happening in the heart of Beverly Hills,
totally.
I think we're in better shape than we thought.
Give me one quick thing, and I know you're the positive guy, but why are you not a Biden supporter? And because most of these people are going to be Biden supporters, so what's the problem with Biden?
I think Biden's a nice guy. I think he's fine. Again, he's been in office for 47 years. He has done nothing. I think if you're going to attack someone for their personal character, Biden actually have things that are attackable. But this is not a Biden administration. This is a Kamala Harris administration. And I do not want to live in a country that's starting to creep over into socialism and communism. I want to live in a free capitalist country. And I pray to God, especially after we've just seen Biden's tax plan, there are other people who agree with me.
And certainly people in Florida agree with you, with Cubans and all the rest. They've seen what happens as we creep in that direction. And with people like you, I predict a Florida landslide. I really do. So Brian Cloudus, and that's his Twitter, Brian CLOWDUS. Brian, awesome to talk to you, brother.
Thanks so much for having me.
Have a great day. Trump's silent majority. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, welcome back to our special Trump's Silent Majority. I want to go to our friend Joseph Pinion. He is a GOP strategist and chair of the Conservative Color Coalition. How are you, brother? Good to talk to you again.
Not too bad. Always great to join you, my friend.
So is there a shy Trump voter in your experience?
Well, look, I think that we learned, perhaps the hard way for some Democrats 4 years ago, and most certainly were some apprehensive Trump voters. We know concretely that anywhere between 10 and 15% of people that went into ballot boxes and voted for Barack Obama not once but twice turned around and cast a ballot for President Trump. I think, again, we could be looking at a similar situation here when we start talking about the fact that, I did a focus group a couple weeks ago with a young man from the inner city who said probably the most profound thing I've heard of this entire electoral cycle, which was that, his hood did not get better underneath Barack Obama, and it did not get worse underneath President Trump. And so I think when you look at it from that perspective, there are a lot of people across this country, whether you're talking about inner cities or whether you're talking about rural America, who simply do not believe that the levers of power work for them. And most of the people that are voting for President Trump are voting because they believe that he is, for better and for worse, this force of nature, unbeholden to the powers that be in D.C. That will shake things up, and change of any kind is better for people who know the status quo does not work for them.
Yeah, that's an interesting person, the Obama voter 2 times, 2X, and then Trump. Tell me more about that person.
Well, look, I think if you look at those, again, we have concrete evidence now that, looking at exit polling, depending on what you look at, about 13% of voters who voted for President Obama, many of whom actually thought America was in the right direction, turned around and voted for President Trump. And you see this phenomenon across the spectrum here. I think it's why you see President Trump often giving so much deference to Bernie Sanders supporters, because we have data that says that 10% of people who voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary 4 years ago turned around and voted for President Trump in the general. And so I think, again, it's all born out of this notion that the things that unite, there are more things that unite us that divide us. And I think that if you look at right now where we are today, if you were somebody who was reluctant to tell pollsters that you were voting for President Trump the first time around, why on earth, after listening to 4 years of every mainstream media, company having voters come on TV to do their mea culpa about how they have embarrassed their country and shamed their family, why on earth would you tell the pollster calling your house line at 5 o'clock in the afternoon that you're going to go ahead and vote for President Trump the second time? So I think that view is underrepresented. I think there's also this notion that Democrats have gone so far left that they have driven people who were previously never Trump into the warm embrace of President Trump. I think we had recently somebody like, we've had, figures across the spectrum who've talked about the fact that, they've now see themselves voting for President Trump the second time around. Somebody like Ben Shapiro, who did not support President Trump the first time around. So I think that there can be this overcounting of individuals who Democrats thought were firmly in their coalition. These never Trumpers that were perhaps highlighted at the DNC, not necessarily understanding that they actually in the process have driven people who were undecided about President Trump back into the GOP coalition out of the firm understanding that the policies Democrats are proposing simply want to change America into something that's never been before.
Okay, I got a ton of questions. Pick one policy that you think stands out the most.
Well, I think concretely when you start talking about the issue of jobs, Democrats pretend as if America was the only country that was impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, as if we're the only country that had workers are suddenly in vast numbers unemployed because of policies that we had to implement to save lives. I think it's disingenuous and insulting to the American people to tell them that, we have 20 million Americans, 15 million Americans unemployed, and yet at the same time, the very policies that they're trying to implement, these mandatory lockdowns, these basically going back to the policies that we had in place in February and March, would necessitate that those people actually remain unemployed and that many of the jobs they depended on actually go away permanently. So when you look at a place like New York City, 300,000 jobs coming out of nightlife. You're looking at economic productivity in the tens of billions of dollars strictly out of that nightlife. Your people who work at your greasy spoons, your servers at the nightclub, your bartenders. Those are people who concretely have been directly impacted by this COVID-19 crisis and would be ruined by the type of policies that Democrats are actually promising to implement coming out of the backside of this COVID-19 crisis that we've experienced thus far. So I think that alone. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt. I agree. And I don't think most of those people blame Trump for this, right?
Correct.
I think most people are smart enough to know this is a worldwide thing. And would Biden have been able to do any better? And as you're saying, no, he's promising to make all that worse. I don't even know how to ask this question. Like, what's the influence of someone like a Charlemagne the God or a Diddy even, who have come out just hard against Trump and like dramatically hard, right? Like he's the worst and like it's the worst thing in the world for black people, whatever. Is there any influence on that, or does that not move the needle?
Well, look, I think, to be clear, as a party, the GOP has struggled to get minorities, black people in particular, to vote for us. We're looking at, again, on average, anywhere between 8 to 12% of people voting for the party in recent electoral history. I think, obviously, President Trump and the Trump campaign have done what many have not done, which is to prioritize outreach to the African-American community for better and for worse. I think, again, a lot of this is really just noise. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about maybe the Bradley effect. Those individuals who are, going back to the mayor of Los Angeles, who, you had then it was non-white voters, or white voters telling people that they were undecided or perhaps leaning towards voting for the non-white candidate. I think we might be having that perhaps a Bradley effect in reverse, where you have black people who are terrified to say that they actually support the president or actually are planning on voting for this president. And so I think, probably not so much with black females, but certainly with black males, I think you will see a bit of an uptick. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 30% or 20% for it to have an impact on this election, because President Trump won by less than 78,000 votes across 3 states just 4 years ago. And any type of percentage change that we have as it relates to black voters will have a precipitous impact on this election.
What's been the impact on your, or what was the reaction of your family and or friends when you came out as a conservative?
Well, I mean, to me, it's interesting because, you know, I've been pretty much I was a teenage young Republican, and I was a college young Republican. So this is nothing new for my family. But I think I can speak to a lot of people who I'm friends with, individuals who were reluctant in their conservatism, at least on a public level, to say that people have been shamed, people have been disowned. And I think, to me, really, it is sad. The same people who accuse President Trump of sowing the seeds of division literally are the people who, in many ways, are mirroring the behavior they find detestable. So I think if we look at it from that perspective, we should be able to try to come together to say that if you want people to love their neighbor, if you want people to be concerned about children who are being separated from their families, you know, because parents have made decisions to cross the border in an undocumented manner, you know, then you should also be able to have some compassion for the person who lives next to you, who pays the same taxes you do, whose children go to the same school you do, who simply have a different perspective from a political standpoint, because they're concerned about what's going to be best for their lives. And I think if we can get back to having that conversation, I think we'll be in a much better place, because we're in danger of ending up where we were so many years ago, where we had towns, where we had, you know, Democratic cemeteries on the left and Republican cemeteries on the right, because the greatest fear in life was to be spending eternity buried next to somebody who was in a different political party. And it doesn't take that long, just a generation ago, to get back to that type of society. And I think, again, right now, in this moment, Americans have to find a way to come together.
Yeah, and I think about the media's role and all that, and it's a shame. Joseph Pinion, GOP strategist, chair of the Conservative Color Coalition. Always good to talk to you, man.
My friend, good to talk to you.
Have a wonderful day. We'll do it again. Trump's silent majority. Gosh, we'll see in a couple days. Mike Slater, spread the word.